The woman let out a strangled scream, her face turning white as a sheet. Chapter 5. The social worker stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God. Oh my God. The younger woman rushed to her side, then froze. Her eyes went wide, her lips parted, and a sound escaped her throat, something between a gasp and a sob. Someone call an ambulance. The older woman finally screamed. Then my mother laughed nervously. What's all the fuss about? Did Reyna make a mess of the bathroom? I swear that girl. She stepped toward the door. I watched her face. First confusion, then disbelief, then something I had never seen before. Something that looked like the ground itself had opened up beneath her feet. No, the word came out soft, quiet, like she was talking to herself. No, 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 no. She pushed past the social worker and stumbled into the bathroom. I followed her inside. The water had long since gone cold, a deep, dark crimson stained the porcelain. My body lay submerged, my eyes half open, my skin the color of old milk. The gash on my forehead had stopped bleeding. The water had stopped rippling. Everything was still, to stilled. Mom fell to her knees beside the tub. She reached out, her hand shaking, and touched my face. Reyna, her voice cracked. Reyna, sweetie, wake up. Mommy's here. Mommy's sorry. My face was cold. So cold, she pulled her hand back like she'd been burned. Reyna, the scream tore out of her. Wah, animal. Unrecognizable. She grabbed my shoulders and tried to pull me out of the water. But my body was heavy, lifeless, dead weight.
Help me,
she shrieked.
somebody help me.
Dad appeared in the doorway. His face was pale, his eyes darting around the room, like he was looking for an escape route.
What?
What happened?
Help me get her out.
Mom screamed that he didn't move. He just stood there staring at the crimson water, at my pale face, the blood that had dried in a dark trail down my cheek. Oh, God, he whispered.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Jo was behind him, peeking through the gap between his arm and the door frame. Her eyes were wide. Dot. Not S-E-A-E-D.
Dotsi.
I-O-U-S-L-E-K-A. She was watching a movie and wanted to see what happened next. Dot. The ambulance arrived 11 minutes later. 11 minutes of my mother screaming. 11 minutes of my father pacing back and forth, his phone clutched in his hand, not knowing who to call. 11 minutes of just standing in the corner of the living room, her face blank, watching everything. The paramedics pushed past my parents and into the bathroom. Dot. I floated above them, watching as they checked for a pulse, watched as they shook their heads, watched as one of them pulled out a phone and called the coroner. I'm sorry, the paramedic said to my parents. She is gone, has been for several hours. There's nothing we can do. My mother collapsed.
Dot.
Her legs gave out beneath her, and she hit the floor like a sack of bricks. The sound of her crying filled the whole house.
Loud.
Ugly, desperate.
No, no.
You're wrong. She is just unconscious. She is just cold. She needs to warm up. She is fine. She is fine. Dad grabbed the paramedic's arm. You have to do something. You can't just give up. The paramedic's face was kind but firm. Sir, I'm very sorry for your loss, but your daughter has been deceased for quite some time. Even if we had gotten here hours ago. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to walked over to my parents and wrapped her arms around my mother's shoulders. Auntie, don't cry. I'm still here. I'll be your daughter now. My mother didn't respond. She just kept crying, her body shaking with every sob. Dad pulled Jo into a hug. At least we still have you, he whispered. At least we still have you. I floated in the corner of the room watching them. At least we still have you. Not what happened to our daughter. Not how did she die. Not why was she locked in the bathroom for an entire day. At least we still have you. I laughed. The sound didn't travel. No one could hear me. The police arrived an hour later. 2 detectives, man and a woman. They interviewed my parents separately, then together. They took pictures of the bathroom. They bagged the key as evidence. But just sat on the couch the whole time, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes big and innocent. The female detective knelt down in front of her. Sweetheart, can you tell me what happened today? Jazz's lower lip trembled. I don't know. Reyna locked herself in the bathroom. She wouldn't come out.
She was always like that.
She never wanted to share anything with me. The detective's face softened. Did you see anyone go into the bathroom yesterday? Anyone besides your sister? Just shook her head no. Reyna went in by herself. She didn't come out. She didn't come out all day?
No.
The detective frowned. Did you tell your parents, Jen? I told them, but they were tired. They said to let her calm down. The detective glanced at my parents, who were sitting on the other side of the room, looking hollow and broken. Did they try to open the door? They looked for the key, but they couldn't find it.
Jazz's voice was small, sad.
I think Reyna hid it. She didn't want anyone to interrupt her bath. Detective wrote something in her notebook that I floated closer, hovering right next to Jazz's face that she's lying. I wanted to scream. She locked me in.
She pushed me.
She took the key. She hid it in the trash. She's lying. She's lying. She's lying. But no sound came out. The detective patted Jazz's head. Thank you, sweetheart. You've been very helpful. Just smiled. A small, sad, perfect smile. Can I have some apple juice now?
She asked that.
The funeral was 3 days later. A small service, a white casket, flowers everywhere. White lilies, my favorite. My mother wore black. My father wore black. G wore a black dress with white polka dots. Dot. She looked adorable. People came up to my parents offering condolences, hugging them, crying with them. She was such a sweet girl. So young, so tragic. At least you still have G. At least you still have G. Those words followed me like a curse. Dot. The priest spoke about the fragility of life, about cherishing every moment, about family that I floated above my own funeral, watching people cry over a body that wasn't even mine anymore. Not really. My soul had left the moment I hit my head. What was left in that casket was just flesh, just bones, just a shell. Dot. The real me was up here watching, waiting, for what I didn't know. Dot. After the service, people gathered at the house. My parents stood in the living room accepting plates of food. They didn't eat cups of coffee, they didn't drink. Got to stay by their side the whole time, holding my mother's hand, patting my father's back. You still have me, she kept saying. I'm not going anywhere. My mother would nod, wipe her eyes, and squeeze Jazz's hand. I know, sweetie.
I know.
I watched them, this perfect little family that they didn't need me. They never had. That night after everyone left, my parents sat at the kitchen table, that empty coffee cups in front of them, a half-eaten casserole between them, neither one speaking that Joe was in her room asleep, for pretending to beat. My mother finally broke the silence. The bathroom door, Dad looked up. What about it? It was locked from the outside. Dad frowned. What do you mean? I tried the lock when the police weren't looking. The bolt was on the outside. Mom's voice was trembling. Reyna couldn't have locked herself in. Someone locked her in. The silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Who? Dad asked, but his voice was strange. Flat, like he already knew the answer. Mom didn't answer. They both looked toward Jess's bedroom door. The key, Mom whispered. It was in the trash. Why would it be in the trash? Dad ran a hand over his face. She said Reyna hid it, but she also said Reyna locked herself in. Mom's eyes were red, hollow. If Reyna locked herself in, she would have taken the key inside with her or left it in the lock. She wouldn't have thrown it in the trash. The kitchen was very quiet. Maybe it fell, Dad said weakly. Mom shook her head. The trash can is on the other side of the hallway. The key didn't fall there. It was placed there. I floated between them, my heart racing. Dot. They were figuring it out. Finally. They were actually figuring it out. What are you saying? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Dot. Mom looked at him. Her eyes were wet. Her face was pale. I'm saying that our daughter didn't kill herself. Someone killed her, and that someone is still in this house. They both turned to look at Jazz's door. The door was closed. The light was off. But I could see through the wall. Dot. Joe was standing on the other side, her ear pressed to the wood listening, and she was smiling. The smile on G's face was not that of a child. It was something old, sharp, and empty. She stepped back from her bedroom door, her bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. With practiced ease, she padded over to her bed, slipped under the pastel pink comforter, and closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed, evening, out into the perfect, rhythmic rise and fall of a peaceful slumber. Through the wall, I watched her. I drifted closer, passing through the plaster, and wouldn't till I was hovering directly over her bed. I wanted to reach down and wrap my cold, incorporeal fingers around her throat. I wanted to shake her, awake, to scream in her face until her eardrums burst. But when I brought my hands down, they slipped through her chest like mist. She didn't even shiver. In the kitchen, the silence had grown heavy, suffocating. She's a child, Helen, Dad finally whispered, his voice trembling.
She's 8
years old. You're talking about her like she's a monster. Mom stared at the half-eaten casserole, her eyes unblinking. She locked her in. David. She locked the door from the outside, took the key, and threw it in the
trash.
She sat in the living room watching television while Reyna drowned. We don't know that. Dad's voice cracked. He sounded desperate, begging for an alternative reality. Maybe Reyna slipped. Maybe she hit her head first, and the
door.
The deadbolt is on the hallway side. Mom slammed her hand onto the table.
The
coffee cups rattled. You can't lock it from the inside. You know this, David. We changed that lock when they were toddlers to keep them out of the medicine cabinet, and we never changed it back. Dad looked away, his jaw tightening. The truth was a physical weight in the room, pressing down on them. I'm calling Detective Harris in the morning, Mom said, her voice dropping to a terrifying, absolute calm. I don't care that we just buried her. I don't care. That G is just a little girl. She did this. And I can't look at her anymore.
Dad didn't argue.
He just lowered his head onto his arms and wept. I floated above them, a ghost in my own home, feeling the first spark of something new. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was anger, a hot, vibrating rage that started in the center of my transparent chest. As my anger flared, the overhead kitchen light flickered. Just once. A sharp, electrical BZZT. Mom looked up. Dad wiped his eyes. Neither said a word, but the temperature in the kitchen had dropped 10 degrees. I looked at my pale, glowing hands. I did
that.
The next morning, the house felt like a graveyard. Mom moved like a machine, her face hollow, her eyes refusing to meet G's.
Dad
had left early for work, or at least that was the excuse he gave. He just couldn't bear to be in the house. G sat at the breakfast table, swinging her legs, humming a cartoon theme song. She was wearing my favorite sweater, the oversized beige one that used to swallow her small frame. She had pulled it out of my closet. Mommy, can I have more syrup? G asked, holding up a piece of waffle on her
fork.
Mom stopped washing the dishes. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of the sink. She didn't turn around. Get it yourself. G's humming stopped. She lowered her fork. Her big, innocent eyes narrowed into a cold, calculating glare. She stared at Mom's back for a long, silent minute.
I
hovered right beside G, watching the mask slip. The sweet, dependent little girl melted away, revealing the calculating predator beneath. Okay, G chirped brightly, the mask snapping back into place. She hopped off the chair, dragged a stool to the pantry, and fetched the syrup. At 10 a.m., Mom picked up her cell phone. She walked into her bedroom and locked the door. I phased through the wood to follow her. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial the number. Detective Harris? Yes, it's Helen, Reyna's mother. A sob tore from her throat, but she swallowed it down. I need you to come to the house. There's something about the bathroom door. The lock. I think my youngest daughter. A soft click echoed in the room. Mom pulled the phone away from her ear. The screen had gone completely black. Hello, she panicked, tapping the screen. Nothing. The battery was dead.
But I
had seen it charging all night. I drifted through the floorboards, down into the basement. G was standing by. The circuit breaker. She had flipped the master switch to the upper floor. Outlets an hour ago, cutting the power to Mom's charger. And now she was holding Dad's heavy metal flashlight in one hand and a pair of gardening shears in the other. With a chilling calmness, G walked over to the telephone junction box on the basement wall.
Snip.
The landline was dead. She turned and looked right at the space where I was floating. For a second, my non-existent heart stopped. Could she see me? Her eyes stared right through me, dark and empty. She smiled, a small, terrifying curl of her lips, and whispered to the empty room, "It's just us now." By noon, the atmosphere in the house had devolved into suffocating paranoia.
Mom
came downstairs, her dead phone clutched in her hand, looking for the landline. When she picked up the receiver in the living room and heard only dead air, the last bit of color drained from her face. "Gee," Mom called out, her voice trembling. "Gee, where are you?" No answer. The house was dead quiet. I floated from room to room, frantically searching. I found G in the hallway at the top of the stairs. She was meticulously lining up my old glass marbles along the edge of the top step. She placed them carefully under the lip of the carpet. Runner, completely hidden from anyone walking up, but perfectly positioned for a foot stepping down.
No. No, you little psycho.
I lunged forward, trying to scatter the marbles, but my hands just passed through them. I screamed, but no sound came out. The rage inside me boiled, burning like dry ice. I focused everything I had, every ounce of grief, every ounce of anger, on one single marble. Move. The marble twitched. Just a millimeter. But it moved. Before I could try again, Mom's footsteps sounded from the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah?
Are you up there? Mom began to climb. 1 step. 2 steps. G was standing at the very top, her hands behind her back, her face a mask of perfect childish concern. I'm here, Mommy. I don't feel so good. Don't move, Mom said, her voice sharp with a mixture of fear and maternal instinct. She was halfway up. 5 steps left. 3 steps. I threw myself in front of Mom, waving my arms.
Stop. Look down.
Mom shivered. She paused on the second to last step, rubbing her arms. Why is it's so freezing in here, she murmured. She looked directly through my face, then looked down at her feet. The cold had caused the wood of the stairs to contract slightly. A single glass marble popped out from under the carpet runner and rolled down, bouncing off Mom's shoe.
Clack, clack, clack.
Mom stared at the marble as it tumbled all the way to the bottom floor. Then, slowly, she looked up at G. G's expression didn't change, but her eyes darkened. The trap had failed. What is that? Mom whispered, her voice laced with horror. She looked at the top step, where a dozen more marbles sat hidden in the shadows. She looked back, up at her adopted daughter. I was playing, G said softly. You used to play with Reyna, but you don't play with me. You put those there, Mom said, backing down 1 step. You wanted me to fall. You don't love me, G replied, her voice eerily calm. She took a step forward. You only loved her. Even now, you only think about her. Stay away from me, Mom gasped, turning and practically running down the rest of the stairs. She reached the bottom, panting, and backed away into the kitchen. G didn't chase her. She just stood at the top of the stairs, looking down like a queen surveying her dungeon. Daddy will be home soon. But it's raining outside. The roads are so slippery. By 6 p.m., a torrential downpour was hammering the roof. Dad hadn't come home. Mom was pacing the kitchen, holding a large butcher knife, her eyes darting to the doorway every few seconds. G had locked herself in my old bedroom. I split my time between hovering near Mom to keep the air around her cold, a warning system if G approached, and phasing into my bedroom to watch G. G wasn't playing with toys. She had dragged my heavy wooden chair to the window and was sitting on it, watching the driveway. In her lap was Dad's missing cell
phone.
She was playing a game on it. I drifted closer and looked at the screen. It wasn't a game. It was a text message thread with Dad. Dad. Hey, sweetie, is Mom okay? She isn't answering her phone. G, typing from Dad's phone to Mom's phone?
No, wait.
G had both phones. She had stolen Mom's phone while she slept, swapped the cases, and given Mom a dead dummy phone from the junk drawer. G, as Mom, I'm taking the car. I need to get away for a while. Don't come home
tonight.
The keys are under the mat. Dad, Helen, wait please. We need to talk
about this.
G, as Mom, leave me alone. I can't look at you. I stared in absolute horror. She was isolating Mom. She was keeping Dad away. G deleted the text thread, turned off Dad's phone, and tossed it into the trash. She hopped off the chair and walked to the door. It was time. Downstairs, the lights suddenly went out. The entire house plunged into pitch blackness. The storm raged outside, throwing jagged flashes of lightning through the windows. Mom shrieked in the kitchen. I flew through the floorboards, finding her backed into a corner, trembling, the butcher knife raised. G. Mom screamed into the dark. Turn the lights back on. Right now. Only the sound of rain answered her. Then, a soft, scraping noise came from the hallway.
Scrape, drag, scrape, drag.
Mom tightened her grip on the knife. She inched her way out of the kitchen, using the lightning flashes to navigate. The house felt massive, a labyrinth of shadows. Gee, I swear to God, Mom sobbed. Stop this.
Scrape, drag.
The sound was coming from the bathroom where I had
died.
Mom reached the doorway. The door was wide open. Inside, the tub was full of water. The faucet was off, but the water was rippling slightly. Standing on the edge of the porcelain tub, balancing perfectly in the dark, was
G.
She was holding a heavy ceramic vase, the one from a hallway table. "What are you doing?" Mom cried, dropping the knife. "Get down from there. You'll slip." Even now, terrified of the girl, the mother inside her couldn't bear to watch a child get hurt. Mom rushed forward, reaching her hands out to grab G's waist. It was a trap. As soon as Mom stepped onto the wet bathroom tiles, G threw the heavy ceramic
Face straight down.
but not at the floor. She threw it directly at Mom's face. The vase shattered against Mom's forehead with a sickening crack. Mom screamed, her hands flying to her face, and she stumbled backward. Her heel slipped on the wet tile. She flailed, trying to catch herself, but the edge of the bathroom counter caught her right at the base of her skull. She collapsed onto the floor, a crumpled, lifeless heap. "Emma!" I screamed, though it echoed only in the spirit realm. I threw myself over her body. G calmly hopped down from the edge of the tub. She walked over to Mom and nudged her shoulder with a bare foot. Mom groaned, her eyelids fluttering.
She
Was alive, but barely conscious. Blood was pooling beneath her head, mixing with the water on the tiles. G reached down, grabbed Mom beneath her armpits, and began to drag her toward the bathtub. "She's going to drown her, just like she drowned me." The realization hit me like a freight train. My mother was going to die in the exact same water, in the exact same tub, and nobody would know. G would tell. The police. Mom went crazy with grief and killed herself. Or slipped. She would play the traumatized orphan perfectly.
No.
My anger shattered whatever barrier kept me bound to the role of a passive observer. The air in the bathroom didn't just grow cold, it plummeted to freezing. Frost bloomed rapidly across the bathroom mirror. The water in the toilet bowl instantly turned to ice with a loud crack.
You froze.
She dropped Mom's arms and looked around. The air was escaping her, mouth invisible, white puffs of vapor. "Who's there?" G demanded, her voice losing its calm for the first time.
She
Sounded like a little girl now. A scared little girl. I didn't try to move objects anymore. I focused on the water. The tub full of water.
rise.
The water in the tub began to bubble. Not from heat, but from an invisible, violently churning force. It began to spill over the edges, flooding the floor, rushing toward G's bare feet. "Stop it!" G yelled, backing away toward the door. I floated up, directly in front of the doorway, blocking her path. I poured every ounce of my will into manifesting. I wanted her to see me. I needed her to see me. In the reflection of the frosted mirror, my image flickered. My skin was the color of old milk. My hair was plastered to my face, dripping spectral water. The gash on my forehead gaped open, dark and crimson. G saw the reflection. She screamed. It was a raw, guttural sound of pure terror. She turned to run out the door, but I slammed it shut right at her face. The deadbolt clicked loudly. I had locked it from the outside, just like she did too.
Me.
G clawed at the door handle. "Let me out! Let me out!" I materialized right behind her, my cold presence wrapping around her like a wet blanket. I whispered directly into her ear, my voice sounding like the rushing of deep, dark water. "Does it feel cold, G? Does it feel lonely?" She spun around, swinging her fists through the air, hitting nothing but freezing mist. "Go away. You're dead. I killed you, you're dead." On the floor, Mom stirred. Her eyes opened, hazy and unfocused, but she heard the words. She heard the confession. G didn't notice Mom waking up. She was too busy backing away from the frost, spreading across the walls, from the freezing water rising past her ankles.
The
drain had popped open, but the water wasn't going down, it was flowing backward, filling the room faster and faster. "Mommy!" G screamed, dropping her psychopath facade completely. "Mommy, help.
Me.
She's here. Reyna's here." Mom pushed herself up on one elbow, clutching her bleeding head. She looked at G, cowering in the corner of the bathroom, crying real, panicked tears.
Then
Mom looked at the frosty mirror, and for a fleeting second, she saw my reflection. Her eyes filled with a terrifying, heartbreaking mixture of sorrow and love. "I'm sorry, Mom." I projected the thought to her, wrapping a bubble of warmth around her shivering body. "I love you." Mom didn't try to help G. She didn't reach out. She pulled her knees to her chest, resting her bleeding head against the cabinet, and watched. "Mommy!" G shrieked, the freezing water now at her knees. The temperature was so low her lips were turning blue.
Please.
The lights suddenly flickered back on, glaringly bright. Downstairs, the front door smashed open. Helen.
Yeah.
Dad's voice echoed up the stairs. He hadn't listened to the text. He had come home. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Dad hit the bathroom door, finding it locked. Helen, open the door. Mom slowly raised her hand and unlocked the deadbolt from the inside. The one we had installed years ago for privacy, not the hallway lock. Dad burst in. The bathroom was freezing, covered in frost, but the water was just a puddle on the floor. The illusion of the rising flood faded the moment. The door opened. G was huddled in the corner, sobbing hysterically, pointing at the empty air. She tried to drown me. Reyna tried to drown me. Dad rushed to Mom, pulling her into his arms, seeing the blood on her head.
Oh.
My God, Helen, what happened? Did you slip? Mom looked at Dad, her eyes completely clear, her voice devoid of any doubt. She pushed me, Mom whispered, pointing a shaking finger at the 8-year-old girl cowering in the corner. And she killed Reyna. I heard her. She confessed to it all. Dad froze. He looked at G. G looked back at him, her face completely pale. The panic in her eyes slowly turning into something dark and cornered. She realized the act was over. She realized I had forced her hand. She was in the way, G muttered, her voice dropping the childish pitch, sounding hollow and vicious. She wouldn't share you. Dad physically recoiled. The horror dawning on his face was absolute. The daughter he had been clinging to, the innocent child he had tried to protect, evaporated before his eyes, replaced by the monster she truly was. He didn't yell. He didn't attack her. He just picked Mom up in his arms, carried her out of the bathroom, and shut the door behind him.
Click.
He turned the hallway deadbolt. He locked G inside. Let me out. G screamed, pounding on the heavy wood. Don't leave me in here. She's in here with me. Dad carried Mom down the stairs, his face resolute. I'm calling the police. Helen, we're ending this tonight. I stayed behind in the hallway, listening to G's frantic screams from the bathroom. I passed through the door one last time. G was backed against the bathtub, shivering violently, her eyes darting around the freezing room. I didn't manifest a monster. I didn't raise the water again. I simply stood over the bathtub, looked at her, and turned the faucet on.
Splash.
The sound of running water filled the room. G clamped her hands over her ears, screaming for a mother and father who would never answer her again. She was trapped in the same cold, what hell she had built for me. And she would be here until they took her away. I looked at the water flowing into the tub, and for the first time since my heart stopped beating, the heavy, suffocating weight inside my chest lifted. The frost on the mirror began to melt. The air warmed. Downstairs, I heard the wail of approaching sirens, a sharp, piercing sound, cutting through the storm. Justice was coming. I closed my eyes, let go of the anger, and allowed the dark, pulling tide of the afterlife to finally wash me away.